Whoa, welcome to Pittsburgh Sportsline. You just caught us. This is a live TV show, broadcast everywhere. Verizon 32. I don't know what happened. Welcome, John Tiger the Kiger. He's back. Oh, no. Aaron Ward in the control room. Devin Shea. Oh, man, where's that timer? I didn't even know we had a start on this show. Are we live?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for watching us, guys. We appreciate it. We're getting a lot of great feedback in the community. We've got a lot of great sports to talk about. And I'm Al Levine, the talking machine. We got Chip the Prophet Hayner, Smoking Jim Frazier, and Zach Brenner. He's on his streak again. I think this is like 3 in a row. So he's back. And what we start off with, if you don't know the show, it's What's on Our Mind. And we're going to go do that right now. What's on your mind, Zach Brenner?
Well, Al Levine, the talking machine, I'm going to tell you what's on my mind. The Penguins are on my mind. Over the summer, I was a little bit hypercritical of the Pittsburgh Penguins in the front office, Ray Shero and company. I kind of wanted Dan Bowles, the head coach, fired, and I wanted all the assistant coaches fired as well. Well, it turns out that I've been proven wrong since the beginning of the season. The coaching staff has done a phenomenal job. The Penguins are ranked first in power play and penalty kill. And then, to make things even better, they're playing with so many guys from the baby Penguins right now, and you can't even really tell that most of our stars aren't even on the ice right now. So that's what's on my mind now, Levine. I was wrong about the Penguins front office and the coaching staff. They're doing a great job so far this season. And I look for a deep run in the playoffs from the Penguins.
Welcome back, Zach Brenner. We appreciate honesty. Again, we agree to disagree on most stuff here since we're all opinionated, and we all hate to be wrong. So it takes a big man like Little Z to admit he was wrong.
Thanks, Al.
Smoking Jim Frazier, what's on your mind?
Hey, thanks, Al Levine, the talking machine. And if you want the green, you got to see Levine in I know you were wrong too, Lil Z, on Steel Valley making the playoffs or finishing above 500. But hey, real quick, what's on my mind is, the Pittsburgh Steelers last year, and they may pay the price for it Sunday. Last year, they could have had in the first round Eddie Lacy. Of course, they could have still got him in the second round, and they could have still got Le'Veon Bell. You need 2 running backs. And they could have had their 2 running backs in the future, but instead they got a dreadlock wearing 4.92 40-yard dash running outside linebacker. Now that Woodley is hurt again and won't return, they'll probably have to draft another linebacker here in the first round next draft. But anywho, what's on my mind is my main man Lou Holtz, and I tell you what, going all over the country. I run into Coach Lou Holtz every once in a while. So we're going to go way back with something Lou Holtz shared with me. A couple of things. One thing he said, he would say, "Smoking Jim, no one has ever drowned in sweat." And that's so true, And so Lou Holtz always coming up with a little something. But he shared a story with me about Arkansas. In 1977, Lou Holtz was a first-year coach at the University of Arkansas, and they were ranked a distant number 2 in the nation. This is before BCS. And they were getting ready to play Oklahoma, which was not only the number 1 team in college football in 1977, but they were probably maybe the greatest college team of all time. Prior to that game, Lou Holtz had to suspend his top 2 running backs and his best wide receivers, which came up to 78% of their offense. Those guys got together and they sued to get a court injunction so that they could play in the game because they thought they should not have been suspended for breaking team rules. Lou Holtz, being a state employee, was represented by the state of Arkansas Attorney General, which was Bill Clinton.
Slick Willie.
Bill Clinton won. Those guys did not play. The bookies rated Arkansas a 24-point underdog to Oklahoma in the Orange Bowl. Only thing Arkansas had going for them going into that game was they had the best defense in college football. And their defensive coordinator in 1977 was who? Monty Kiffin. Nice. Monty Kiffin was their defensive coordinator. They had the great defense. And led by that great defense of Monty Kiffin.
What happened to Dallas now?
That's when he was young.
And led by Lou Holtz. They upset Oklahoma 34-6, even with all the suspended players. So that's what's on my mind. Coach Lou Holtz, happy 76 years, and I hope you have several more.
Love Coach Lou.
Thanks, Smoking Jim. Quite an inspiration there.
No one ever drowned it in sweat.
I'll even make it a little more narrow. Nobody ever drowned it in their own sweat. Because I've seen some teams that are sweating out there. You can quote me on that one.
Thanks, Al.
Chip the Prophet Hayner, what's on your mind?
That's on my mind. Well, thank you very much, Alan. Just wanted to make a brief mention of a pretty amazing feat happened over at the University of Pittsburgh, and Aaron Donald won just about every award that you could win in college football, with the exception of the Heisman. And I don't know how he didn't get considered for that award, winning all the other ones. But really, to get back to what's on my mind,
we'll revisit.
Yeah, we're going to revisit. And we're probably going to want to revisit what I'm going to talk about now, because I'm sure people are going to have some very differing opinions on what I'm going to put on.
Smoking Jim said 3. Chip's got 4 going here.
Yeah, here's where I'm going with this, guys. You know, we have taken to task every commissioner of every sports entity in North America. Roger Goodell and his way of trying to clean up football and making it a kinder, a gentler game. Bud Selig trying to clean up the sport. Well, now we've got Gary Bettman in the NHL that are just making a complete mockery of what they're trying to do with the league. Now, the league is trying to remove the hits to the head out of the game. Sounds like a pretty noble cause. Everybody's very, very aware of concussions now. The NFL had a class action lawsuit, which they hornswoggled the players into settling so that they didn't have to spend as much. Well, the NHL now has a class action lawsuit against some of its former players. So now what we're doing is that every time somebody gets involved with being hit in the head, there are immediate suspensions, and then it's reviewed, and then a suspension is handed down. And just to give you an example of how that just doesn't make any sense, let's take, for example, James Neal. James Neal, Penguin winger, deliberately knees Marchand in the head, okay? And he gets a 5-game suspension, all right? Now, he admitted that, yeah, I could have avoided kneeing him in the head, but because of who it was, he went ahead and kneed him in the head. Well, then you got Brooks Orpik, who gets assaulted from behind by a player from the Bruins, pushed down to the ice, and punched in the head repeatedly, even after he was unconscious. And what does the league do? They give this guy a 15-game penalty. Now, this was not an accidental. It wasn't a continuation of a play. This was assault and battery, plain and simple. So now, the other night, Derek England for the Penguins, in the course of a play, ended up hitting a guy who was 6 inches shorter than him in the head with his shoulder when he wasn't trying to hit him in the head. Now, all of a sudden, he's called to the New York for an interview with the NHL. Now, if you do your interview over phone, the highest penalty that you can get is 5 games. So when you get summoned to New York, that means that your suspension is going to be more than 5 games. Well, here you got somebody that deliberately needs somebody in the head that got a 5-game suspension. You've got somebody that assaulted somebody, and get a guy that just the continuation of a play hits somebody, and who knows what's going to happen to him because he's a previous offender. Well, here's what my thought is. If we're going to try to get hits to the head out of hockey, why do they allow fighting to happen in hockey? I know it's part of the culture, it's part of the game, but when you were fighting in hockey, you were deliberately targeting somebody's head, and what you're trying to do is pummel it. And if you're trying to get that out of the game, why would you punish people for kneeing somebody in the head or hitting somebody while they're down or inadvertently hitting somebody with your shoulder? I think it doesn't make any sense at all, and I think at this time, it's about time to take fighting out of hockey. I really don't think it serves any good purpose. And if you watch the international game, the international hockey game is action end-to-end, and it's a much more enjoyable game to watch. And I know this kind of is hard for me to say because I've been a hockey fan all my life. Hey, I love the Broad Street Bullies when they used to just hammer people. But I think we've grown past that point, and I think it's time to do away with fighting in hockey. That's what's on my mind.
We'll revisit that.
That's my favorite part about hockey, fighting.
Well, we'll revisit that because I know it's on.
I thought Jerome
hot
McGinley
topic.
was your favorite part of hockey.
That was when he found out about him. All right. What's
Grant
on
Fuhr?
my mind is just listening to these guys talk about one subject on their minds. No, I'm not serious. Got him. Shut his mic down. Too many inside jokes.
How do you shut a Gateway person up? You tell a joke and watch them laugh.
You're paraphrasing one of that Cleveland joke that he has. Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody for liking us on Pittsburgh Sportsline. We hit a new high of 2,016 likes, and we appreciate it. You're watching our videos and shows throughout the area. You know, I talked to Dan Wagner with Pedal Power. He's actually dropped magazines off in Lawrence County. We've been in West Virginia. We're blanketing the area with them. We're going to be coming out with a new edition in January. We're getting through with that, so we got some more things going on. The feedback's great. I actually have people calling me up, when are we getting another magazine? So it's good stuff there. And I appreciate you watching the show, running into a lot of people at different events throughout the city. Matter of fact, we had our special edition of a mini show at Jessica Lee's Jazz Networking at Little E's last week, and we had a lot of great reviews there. You have to watch that show. It's a mini show. It's only a half hour. You got to check out Little Z and Smoking Jim Frazier there. They were superstars. So, and we had fun. The crowd enjoyed it. And that's what we're doing out in the community. We thank Bethel Park, BPTV, especially Dave Cable with editing the shows, putting in the graphics. What do you see the different graphics that he put for Monday night's show? We had a lot of great guests there if you saw that. So it's just fantastic to be able to do this. So I'm thankful. It looks like we're not going to have a Christmas Eve show and a New Year's Eve show right now. It could change, but it doesn't look that way. So that's why I'm giving out some of the things that I'm thankful, and we're blessed to be able to do this show for you. I know we're not always agreeing up here, nor do we plan on it, even in the future. So just enjoy it, folks. And you're allowed to call in. We still have the number. The mic's working. 412-831-3304. And you guys have a nice day. And we're going to continue the show right now with Revisit What's on Our Minds.
Ooh, money. Pistol Pete Maravich.
Speaking of that,
Wow. What a
I had
jump
to show
shot.
off, but
What a
speaking
jump
of
shot.
revisitation there, Little Z, what did you talk about at the beginning? You only mentioned one thing.
Yeah, that
I was the only person to mention one thing.
I know,
But
I
I
had
got
a-
another one for you, folks. I got another good one for you, folks. Listen to this. How do you know when the doorbell rings where the person's from? If it's the pizza man, he's from Gateway. One more. They say the Gators are the gateway to unemployment. That's what they say.
He's on a roll. Who says Steel Valley can't debate?
Hey,
I heard
We
he
got
was
one guy on
I
the
heard he
way.
was a master debater in high school. I'm telling you, Smoking Jim, you can say that twice.
thanks to Ivan Brazo, Ray Brazo's brother, for teaching me all the public speaking that I'm able to do now to go up against these Gateway guys. These now AAA. They're
All right,
going
you
down.
got enough of your
Quad to
jokes
triple.
and all
No,
this.
you know what, Dan, I just speak to Zach's point about, and it's funny that he mentioned the fact that, last summer he was one of many people that said, Dan Baalsma should be fired, Ray Scherer should be fired, and the equipment manager should be fired. And I do believe he said
I
this.
think he left the equipment.
No, I do
manager out.
believe he said the
Goalie
same
coach.
thing about all of the people that run the Pittsburgh Pirates, and I know he's been saying the same thing about whoever's running the Pittsburgh Steelers right now. But you are consistent with that. But the one thing that is going on that's very good with what the Penguins are doing, and all these stars that they have, they've got basically an all-star team on the injured reserve list, is that they run the exact same system for the baby Penguins that they do for the major league team, okay, right, for the big Penguins. So now when they got to bring these kids up from Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, they're not going into a system that's foreign to them. All they're doing is playing the same game that they've been playing there. They're just playing it with world-class athletes now. And then, oh, by the way, they've got a Sidney Crosby out there to win the game for you in the third period, just like he did last night. But, the Penguins right now, and they're not getting any respect from the people in hockey. Last time I checked, watching on the NHL Network, they didn't even have the Penguins ranked in the top 5 teams in the league, and I just find that very hard to believe. Right now, they rank the Blackhawks up there at number 1, and San Jose's been real strong this year. And, they've got Boston rated ahead of the Penguins. But I think that works better for them. And Marc-Andre Fleury right now, if you were to have to pick a team MVP, I'd say you'd have to tip the hat to him over Sid Crosby because he has absolutely stepped up, and I think he's erasing any concerns anybody had about him. And I'm getting tired of people saying, well, he doesn't do it in the playoffs. Well, you know what? We'll worry about that when it comes.
That's bull too, because he did it. We wouldn't have won that Stanley Cup if it wasn't for Marc-Andre Fleury. He made that save at the end. We wouldn't even have won that game.
Right. And a couple of the other games too. And part of it's a good point with Fleury here. People forget about it, and the problem is if you're not winning, there's a problem. You're winning now, so you're hearing a lot less of that. And that's what happens just naturally. That's what happens with the fans in each sport in Pittsburgh.
Oh, yeah.
No matter how good you are, how bad you are.
He's cut down on the bad goals, too, though. Well, he gave up a bad one last night.
He worked at it. I think he's done some interviews where he's talked about he's worked on that to improve his game.
Well, and, the thing is, with the goaltender and his confidence level, and granted, when going into the playoffs last year, his confidence was shattered. And it was the right thing to put Volkun in and, and run the table with him. But, I think part of the fans' frustration with the Penguins is after we went to 2 Stanley Cups back-to-back in 08 and 09, winning the Cup in 09, there's so much more was expected out of this team. And if you look at the sequence of events that's happened since then, I mean, who could have, Sid Crosby, I mean, who would have ever figured he'd miss a year and a half because of a concussion, because, nobody ever realized that, concussions were...
It wasn't just a concussion, he had a spinal thing going on, too, like in his neck.
I mean, you've had Evgeny Malkin out for extended periods of times, and, and there's just been some, you would think by now, if, 4 years ago you would have said, in 2013, how many cups do you think this Penguins team would have? Everybody would have said 2 or 3, And I think that's part of the frustration.
I still believe they could have had it because the standard is the standard. When these players come up, you're alluding to the fact they play the same system because Terrian started it. When Terrian became the head coach, they made sure the minors and the pros were the same system.
That's where Bylsma came from, too.
Right.
Though. He was the coach.
That's my point to it. So that's why they continued that, so they can fill in the people. That's why him and Tomlin give you all that BS there that they act like they're real low-key and all this other stuff. They're not. But that's what they do for the public. They coach the teams up in the minors all the way up. Same type of system. They have the players they can plug in. They know who these guys are.
But they're doing a better job than they're doing over on the South Side and the North Shore.
Well,
the
think
Penguins
about it.
And the Pirates.
Well, we're going to bring up Smoke and Jim in a second here because when you do the scouting, who do you bring in? Check out the Penguins and Ray Shero.
Tomlin was talking about that today on the
I missed that because until he says the standard is the standard, I'm not listening to it. That's part of the problem. If you don't go by your own words that you said for the last 6 years.
Yeah, but you know what?
And you have the ability because you've had input. And if you haven't, then you shouldn't be here.
6 and 8 is substandard.
But that's how many seasons did Cowher teams underachieve and underperform? So let's not make it out to be like we were the most winningest franchise in the 90s and the 2000s. Like,
well,
no.
How many Hall of Fame quarterbacks does Cowher have? You should never.
Well,
it's like Tom Brady.
Him off?
It's like Tom Brady in New England.
Stewart.
We're in a situation right now. You can't. That's comparing apples and oranges because the reason New England is so successful. Number one, Belichick's a pretty good coach, but he wasn't a great coach in Cleveland. Tom Brady is a Hall of Fame quarterback. When you got a Hall of Fame quarterback, you should never be under 500.
How many brittle brothers does Belichick have in New England? Ask yourself that question, too. And while we're on the subject of frail brothers, I think we should crown Lamar Woodley as the fragilest brother in the city of Pittsburgh in 2013.
Hey, the brother's got a hard time with the calves, man. Brothers, he got them brother calves.
No, to speak to your point. You talked about... Belichick became a really great coach when he inherited
he tapes people, he
Tom Brady,
signals.
whether he drafted him or not. Okay, yes, you remember Ken Wisenhunt when he came over when he went to Arizona when he left Pittsburgh and Tomlin got hired. Ken Wisenhunt was a great coach as long as he had Kurt Warner as his starting quarterback. He lost Kurt Warner as his starting quarterback. Didn't have any quarterback, and all of a sudden he became a mediocre coach. Subsequently, he's...
Larry Fitzgerald's paying for it, too, because without Kurt Warner, throwing the ball to him, he hasn't been the same.
Right. He benefits from the genius. Bruce Arians is out there. So so Fitzgerald will be just fine, brother. He'll be just fine.
Self-labeled.
But part of the problem in each sport is who you bring in as players, and that's part of it. If you have draft picks, and they're not panning out like the Steelers have had. This didn't just happen.
How did they dominate the 70s, though, the Steelers?
Draft.
No, that was prior to free agent era. Because what happened was when you drafted somebody, you owned their rights for their career. So you didn't have players going from team to team to team to team. Because most of the players from the Steelers, 70 Super Bowl teams, were drafted by the Steelers, played their entire career with the Steelers, and retired as a Steeler. So, I mean, it was a different environment that you live in. But you know what? I mean, as critical as we are of, and you know, Todd Haley, Mike Tomlin, and it's funny that Dick Haley, Dick LeBeau has kind of escaped the criticism as much. But to be honest with you, the Steelers are not far away from being a playoff caliber team. And if you look at what they're doing, they're 6-8 right now. You know, they could potentially end up 8-8. They're just a couple of games away from being in the hunt.
Because of number 7, though.
Well, yeah, exactly. And then, and that's as long as they've got number 7, they're going to have an ability to be playoff caliber as long as he stays with the team. Now, I can tell you right now.
What are we revisiting right now? I got lost. Because we'll get Steelers. We'll get Steelers. I thought we're revisiting. Well, here, we need to talk about fighting in hockey. It's not changing because of the Canadian mentality.
It shouldn't change.
Well, I think it should, because in American hockey, they don't fight. And that's part of what, with Orpik and everything else and all this
Sometimes a fight turns the tide of the whole entire game.
Right.
You can swing the momentum.
It changes the complexion many a time. I've said it. I agree with you. Look at the couple of the plays we had when we won the Cup.
Talbot
changed the whole complexion of that game.
I think fighting in hockey has become
archaic. There's fighting in baseball. They clear the benches.
That's a fake fight here. They start swinging their hands and you hold them back.
Fighting in hockey is becoming archaic. It's outdated, and the game needs to change with the times, because right now, hockey can't get a national television contract because it's a garage league. It's a joke. And look at the punishments that they're fighting on. If they want to appeal to the masses, they got to make the game more appealing.
Why don't
and
you
fighting
tell the
isn't
folks
doing
in
it.
baseball about they want to eliminate the home plate collision too? So now I really have no reason to watch baseball now.
And
you don't live for that collision. Come on, it's rare.
That was the funnest thing when you were little, man. The guy got the ball, man. You come charging in there. If you don't hold on to it,
that's one of the most rare occurrences out there. That's like seeing a comet.
You won't be able to slide into anybody in baseball.
And that's a subject for debate at another time. And I'd love to. I could spend the entire show.
Well,
we'll just keep revisiting.
Let me revisit something that is not going to be popular. And this young man went to Penn Hills, and I'm not going to hold that against him. I'm a fan, and I wouldn't mind. I got a 3rd-round grade on him, so I wouldn't mind if the
third-round grade on Mr. McDonald.
If the Steelers could get him late in the 2nd round, that'd be mid-2nd round, early 2nd round when the Steelers pick. I mean, he's a heck of a ball player. There's no way in the world that Reggie White, Lawrence Taylor, Huey Green, none of these guys has ever won 4 major awards. Now you got a kid that had 54 total tackles this year, 10 sacks, and he's picking up hardware all over the country. It's a joke to me. Nothing against him. No, he wasn't at the Heisman because he shouldn't have been at half the places he was. You know, Ohio State got a linebacker that should have won the linebacker award. I don't know how you get a defensive line and a linebacker award, Nagurski and all of this stuff. Nothing against Aaron Donald. There's been a lot of great players over the years, and none of them has ever won 4 major awards defensively. And this guy won 4 major awards on 54 tackles. I tell you what, any team that needs a defensive help, if that's any indication, there must not be much defensive players out there.
Smoking Jim, that's the point I was
going
to make.
He outplayed Clowney from South Carolina. How about that?
Well,
where do you have him graded at? Where's he on here? He's probably in the top 5 on the draft board.
Well, hold it. I got to ask Smoking Jim first. A little disclaimer. You put this same thing out there about the 54 tackles. How many comments did you get on that?
Oh, my goodness.
Did you get over 200?
Oh, close to 200. Yes,
okay, because I even added a few there to try to juice it up for him. Smoking Jim's good on that. But my thing is the talent that you have. You compete against your peers.
Right.
It's not history. And just because he didn't go to Gateway, you got to let that go. I'm serious. If he was at Gateway right now he'd be a first-round draft
And you
pick.
know who played alongside of Mr. McDonald? Tyrone Ezell. And where did Tyrone Ezell go to
Still
school?
Valley.
Still Valley.
Still Valley. He
So-
transferred in his junior year.
Did his parents get a job?
From another state. From another state.
Did his parents have a job and a?
But let me ask you this. Let me
Go ahead.
ask you this, because you guys are. Let me ask you this. Let me ask you specifically to Chip.
What?
Has there been one game this year, Pitt game, that you had something else to do, but you said, I can't go anywhere because Aaron Donald's playing? Nothing against him. I mean, he may be good. Listen, there was a time. Now, you guys, you could probably say this, Al.
I know, I'm
when
older.
Hugh Green played football, nobody missed
He
it.
was a defensive lineman, too.
and
though.
you
What's
make it-
Aaron Donald?
You know, and Jim,
Hey,
you're
hey,
making an
at the
excellent
University
point.
of Pittsburgh, though.
Jim,
you know?
That's where Hugh
Jim,
Green played.
Yeah.
You're making
did.
an excellent point, and you want to know something that makes the fact that he won those awards more amazing. I mean, you think of anybody that was up for any of these major awards got less national television exposure because nobody outside of Pittsburgh saw
That's
any
true.
of those Pitt games.
That's
They
true.
were on national TV, twice? And, he didn't have his absolute best game. So, looking at his body of work over the season and you look at what everyone else, there wasn't anybody else that was head and shoulders better than him. The thing that did it for him was his 26 and a half tackles for loss, which totally blew away anybody else in the country.
That's a good point.
So, I think, it's kind of crazy to think that one guy could win all 4 awards, but, he must have earned them because, he certainly didn't do it under the spotlight.
And hey, I want to go a little bit off subject, but since we're in Bethel Park,
I'd have left him off some.
we had a
balance.
caller. We had a caller call in who's a friend of my son, and I've seen the young man grow up. Mike Telek. He played against Aaron Donald, and after one of the plays, from what my son was telling me, he goes, Mike was saying that Aaron Donald come back, and you remember him in high school. He wasn't in the greatest shape. He looked sort of soft.
Yeah.
But he come back, and he was almost throwing up on poor Mike Telek, my old neighbor and young man. And now look at Aaron Donald. So from where he went from his senior year in high school to get the publicity that he did and not being in a big-time school with a program that really isn't that good.
Exactly. And that's what I
How
was
can
trying
that
to
even
get to.
happen?
Exactly.
Now, you're the man on the inside. So how does a kid that you didn't even think he could
Can you
make
hit
it
me
like
with a
that?
disclaimer?
Yes.
Hit me with a disclaimer. This is a disclaimer.
These are his own
these are-
opinions. And call in at 412-831-3304.
Now, first of all, he wasn't even the best Donald in his family because his brother Archie was a beast and his dad was a beast. They used to call his dad Boom, great player.
Boom.
Now, the reason that no one knows about his brother is because the former coach of Penn Hills, Gordon, was accused of hiding letters from major colleges like Pitt, Penn State, and others, and taking money from Toledo and Akron.
Now,
and
these are
sending
your
them-
opinions, right?
My opinions
Okay.
that are facts. And taking money from teams like Toledo and Akron, supposedly, and sending his players there. And that's why Penn Hills fired him, and he ended up going to Shaler and doing a good job for a couple of years. But Hart always say, and Chip can attest to this, hard work and dedication is the key to success. This guy, when he got out of high school, and he was good in high school,
Yes,
when
he
he
was.
wasn't throwing up on people. But
Yeah.
when he got to
That
Pitt,
means you had a shape.
he worked his tail off because he was short, and he was short. In high school, he was big for high school, but for college, he was short. So he always had to overcome that, and he battled and did a good job. And like I said, I put a 3rd-round grade on him.
Well, and take
When I
into
went up for
account
the
that
Silver
his years at Pitt was a complete shambles. What did he do? Go through half a dozen head coaches from Wanstead to the guy that beat
We
him.
don't even need to
One coach was
revisit
wearing
that. But
the
you know
orange
what?
jumpsuit.
He never
like
got
you
to
was
coach him, though.
Yeah,
So-
He just like when he was
Technicality.
Pitt.
He had the job.
That
for
one
days.
coach would ever got out of jail, he really
but
helped on him.
you look at what he was in high school. In high school, he
That's
was
a
one of the biggest
disclaimer,
kids on the
too.
field. In college, he wasn't one of the biggest defensive linemen out there. Now, what's he going to come in as a pro? Is he going to end up being ultimately an outside or an inside linebacker because he doesn't really have the size to be a defensive
I think
lineman
he could
in
be
the
a Cam
NFL?
Hayward Jr. in time.
Here's what I say. Congratulations to Aaron Donald and everything you've done. You showed class out there. I've listened to your interviews. I've watched you play with a team. Sometimes you're the only guy making a
Give
play.
a shout out to Coach.
He'll be part of Chip's trivia question in about
Give
5
a
years
shout out
when
to
everybody
Coach.
forget who's the only guy to win 4 major awards.
Give a shout out to Coach Christ, because before Coach Christ,
my
there was
goodness.
players getting arrested. There was all kinds of turmoil with Pitt. There was guys that thought they were entitled to things just for playing for Pitt. Third string DB thought he was entitled to valet parking on the south side. There was all kinds of madness at the University of Pittsburgh. So I give a shout out to Coach Chris for trying to do the most he can. And I also want to highlight that some of the best players on the University of Pittsburgh come from Clareton, not Gateway.
Wow.
And that's our revisitation, folks. We set another record of revisitation. We covered half the show. Hope you enjoyed it.
It's been a great show so far. I'm sure the folks
Everyone's a great show. There's great sports to talk about. And as you can see, if we don't, we manufacture some of these great subjects. We bring some things from the past. We agree to, well, not always agree to disagree, but we disagree. So.
Coach Gordon was a thorn in the side of those Gators. That's why you were happy to see him go to
Yeah, we were happy to see
You
him.
probably made the phone call for the violation to turn him in.
I didn't get a cut of that.
All right, we'll go to Sip Sports Bar. We do that as a special little segment here. They have their trivia night every Sunday night. I heard Smokin' Jim and whoever his best friend is
He has a new
showing
one
up
every
there. No, don't say that, because I don't want to see a fight there. I don't like bar fights there. We don't need that.
We got security.
We need you. You were in that Jessica Lee. I didn't realize you were the security there, too. That was a nice photo. I don't know who took that photo. You'll have to let me know, because there were so many photos. I couldn't figure that one out. 71 photos from that. But anyhow, Monday night is Pittsburgh Sportsline. If you don't know, come on out there. They got the best meatball hoagies. I've had 3 weeks in a row of meatball hoagies. Some guys
How
are
many weeks in a row is it for you, Smoking Jim?
every
Can you
other.
count past 3?
Hold it. It's
1, 2.
It's every
3.
other week. What are you doing? Quit picking on Smoking Jim. He enjoys them, and if not, he takes them out and eats them in the van on the way home.
Or his best friend eats them.
Well, I think he's giving the food away, to be honest with you. It looks like he lost 3 pounds here, so he's on his way for the holidays. Then there's Tuesday night to the Campides. We need some 50-cent slice of Campides pizza. You can get that at Sip Sports Bar right now. And they got drink specials and everything else, happy hour. Go see Brandy and Kelly. Smoking Jim thought Brandy was 2 people last night. So you have to come out to Sips to figure that out on Monday night. Wednesday night is Smoking Jim. Everything's Smoking Jim at Sip Sports Bar. Ladies' night. Drink specials and everything else. Thursday night is wings. 25-cent wings. Make sure you go out there. So we have a little fun. Friday they have entertainment, karaoke, and other bands are playing out there. So check out Sip Sports Bar. It's a nice place. We have a great show there, and we had a lot of great guests there, from a golfer, Missy Bertiotti. We had Lucy, the I Love Lucy from Smokin' Jim's makeup show.
You remember what pheromones is?
We're not revisiting Sips. All
I
right.
thought we were revisiting Sips.
No, we aren't. We were just talking about it.
You were revisiting Sips. Okay.
No, just Sip Sports Bar, buddy.
Oh, okay.
It's just a plain, simple segment.
okay.
We can't keep going over everything we talk about here
Absolutely.
till later on, towards your segment again, which is whatever we talk about. So, all right, now for the Smokin' Jim segment. Fiction and fact from Smokin' Jim's Almanac.
Hey, thanks, Al Levine, the talking machine. Is the disclaimer still on?
I shut it off.
Okay.
Because as long as you're not talking Penn Hills, not that you're a hater, but just like with Central, but Gateway's #1 in your heart.
Well, my fiction and fact goes to Florida State, being that this week the Heisman Trophy was given to Florida State's
Jameson Winston.
Date rape Winston.
No, you can't say that. He's like Big Ben. If Big Ben's your hero, I got to put the disclaimer.
Yeah, Big
Never
Ben's not very
convicted.
gentlemanlike in the
You
in the
can't
bathroom.
say it on Jameis.
Well, put it this way. I wouldn't let my sister go out with Ben or Jameis, but
But you love Big Ben.
I love him on the field.
Okay, thanks. That's not a disclaimer. That's the honest
Now
truth.
you're getting some facts from Smoking Jim's own.
But to go back, being that Florida State was in the headlines for the Heisman Trophy, got to go back to the first black player in Florida State history. First black player Florida State history was in 1970.
Wow.
And his name was J.T. Thomas. Ended up being a first-round draft choice here to Pittsburgh Steelers. And J.T. shared a story with me of a defensive coordinator at Florida State that he didn't like by the name of Bill Parcells, who was there. And J.T. Thomas says he come in there with the big afro, with the pick in his head, with the brother sign on that pick, you know what I mean, in his hair. And he says they're getting ready for a game, the first game of the season. He says he's a true freshman. He's surrounded by the media in 1970. And he says that all during camp, Bill Parcells wouldn't speak to him. He'd just look at him. You know, he'd be in the locker room, just look at him, would never speak to him. So he says he's with all the media, about 30 media. He's in the middle with that pick in his hair and that big afro. And the media's asking him, what's it like being the first black player? What's it like to be the first black player? So all of a sudden, Bill Parcells on the other side of the field with some of the teammates, he says, Thomas. He turns around, he says, yes, coach. He says, after you get done talking to the media, he says, go back to your room and call your mama and tell her to send your scrapbook from high school here, because so far you ain't done blankety blank blank. So J.T. Thomas says, man, he got so mad that he did not focus on being the first black player to ever play. He says, man, he was mad. He went back to his dorm room. He was so mad. He said, in that game, late in the game, he ended up blocking a field goal to preserve the victory. And he says he realized now that Bill Parcells, who plays a lot of mind games with guys even to this day, he says he did that to get his mind off of being the first black and being focused on the game, and that's what ended up happening. He ended up having a great career. So that's the fiction and fact from Smoking Jim's Almanac. J.T. Thomas, first black ever at Florida State.
Who was the first quarterback to win the Heisman Trophy for Florida State? Was it Charlie Ward?
Charlie Ward. And that was a Christian man.
That'll
Christian
be another
Mingle.
fiction in fact.
And you know what? I remember you telling a story about J.T. Thomas a couple of years ago, Jim.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I remember that story because I do remember.
I
your
vaguely
story
remember that. You
about
told it
Bill
the same
Parcells.
way.
Just as good. It's just as good the second time.
The only thing, he didn't make any comments throwing me under the bus with a pick or anything. So that was the only difference. I was quiet till now, but you guys are revisiting everything. Let's go to Chip's trivia time.
Oh, thank you, Alan. First bit of, like I always say, useless information.
No.
They like to push Alan's buttons.
It's not working.
First bit of information I've got. December 17th was a significant day in the NFL. December 17th. December 17th, 1933. The very first NFL championship was played. The Chicago Bears and the New York Giants. And the Chicago Bears beat the Giants in Wrigley Field to win the first NFL title.
Wow.
So that happened December 17th.
Guess who made the tackle that saved the game? Red Grange.
There you go.
Seriously?
Straight up.
Wow.
Yeah.
See?
That's why I like trivia.
Yeah, and you know what, and that's why I like going back to old school trivia because, people like, and I'm not giving you a shot, Zach, but people from your generation, they don't think that that the game was played in decades prior to the last two.
Good point.
And there's been some great football players, and there's been some pretty great events. Something that's happening this year that's pretty significant, and I heard this little nugget of information on the radio today. That right now, they were talking about the Steelers' punt return for a touchdown on Sunday and how Terrence Garvin laid out the Bengals punter. Yeah. So they asked a question. They said they came up with a piece of information. They said that the Seattle Seahawks, after 14 games this year, have given, how many yards they've given up in punt returns for the season. So people were just throwing out some numbers. They have given up 19 yards of return yards for punts for the season through the first 14 games.
That's incredible.
That's incredible. Well, do you know what the NFL record is for fewest punt return yards in a season is? Dates all the way back to 1965, Vince Lombardi's Green Bay Packers. Wow. For the season, they gave up 22 punt return yards. And now that was in a 14-game season. So Seattle still has 2 games to play, so there's something
now that you brought that up, they're definitely somebody's going to return one in the
We're all
next game.
superstitious.
No,
and that
happens. But something else happened this past weekend, and this is kind of wrap up Chip's trivia for this week. But if anybody watched the Kansas City Chiefs this week, Jamal Charles went off, and he did something that not a lot of ball players have done in the NFL. I think he's one of 5 people. No, let me see. He's the 6th or the 7th person that scored a minimum of 5 touchdowns in a game.
No, Gale Sayers did.
And he is also the significant thing about his 5 touchdowns is that 4 of those touchdowns were receiving touchdowns, not rushing touchdowns. And I've got a list here of all of the people in NFL history who have 5 touchdowns and I'm just looking at the number of people that have had 4 touchdowns. And a lot of these are wide receivers. And, there's some notable Hall of Famers that are in here, like Elroy Crazy Legs Hirsch, Mike Ditka, Aliquippa's own. Sterling Sharp did it twice. Twice he had 4 touchdown receptions. Then you get to the people that really started to make a name for themselves. Kellen Winslow, 5 touchdowns in one game. Jerry Rice, greatest receiver to play the game, 5 touchdowns in one game, and Bob Shaw. Now, it brings me up to something that Jim just kind of touched on, and I think he might recognize this man's picture right here. And, that leads me to
brother hanging, Chip.
I come over.
There have been 3 people in NFL history that have gotten 6 touchdowns in a single game. And, when you talk about great running backs in NFL history, and everybody talks about Jim Brown and Walter Payton was second to none, and you look at the longevity of Emmett Smith, Barry Sanders et al. But personally, myself, I think the greatest running back that ever played in the NFL, whose career was cut short by injury, was Gale Sayers.
Me too, Chip.
And just to give you an idea,
you guys are soft. You watch Brian's song. That's what happened.
Let me finish.
And I liked it too.
Let me finish. Gale Sayers had 6 touchdowns in a single game, and it was a game against the San Francisco 49ers that the Bears won 61 to. I'll get to that, but. Gale Sayers was drafted by the Chicago Bears and the Kansas City Chiefs. And the Bears were in the NFL, the Chiefs were in the AFL.
I didn't know that.
But signed with Chicago. In his rookie year, he scored an NFL record 22 touchdowns, 14 rushing, 6 receiving, and 1 each on a punt and kickoff returns. He gained 1,374 yards from scrimmage and had 2,272 all-purpose yards.
Wow.
Also a record, later broken by Tim Brown, who played 2 more games than Sayers. He tied Ernie Nevers and Dub Jones' record for single game with 6 touchdowns in a 61-20 victory over San Francisco 49ers on December 12th. Sayers averaged an impressive 5.2 yards per rush, 17.5 yards per reception. His return averages were even more impressive with 14.9 yards punt return, 31.4 yards per kickoff return. He was a unanimous choice for NFL Rookie of the Year honors. Despite his heroics, the Bears finished in 3rd place in the NFL Western Conference behind the Packers and the Colts. But Gale Sayers' career was cut short by a knee injury, and his knee was taken out deliberately by an opposing defensive back, and they didn't have the technology to put knees back together like they do now. And I remember watching him play when I was a child, and I wished I could have seen what he would have been able to accomplish had he had 2 good legs, because they call him the Kansas Comet.
Yes, sir.
He was truly an amazing player, one of the greatest running backs I ever watched play.
Well, can I?
Yeah.
Do you remember? Chicago actually had 2 first-round draft choices in the first round that year. Somebody taking a hit at Gale Sayers. You remember who that was? It was Dick Butkus.
No.
And further, like I've always said, there's some college teams that can beat NFL teams. The proof is this. In '76, the Steelers got beat by a college all-star team. Mm-hmm. But that year in '65, when Gale Sayers came out, it was Gale Sayers, Dick Butkus, college all-stars, led by quarterback Roger Staubach, and they beat the NFL Chicago Bears with Jim Brown. And so, like I said, that was great trivia, man. It was some great.
Yeah,
trivia.
I tell you what, when I was listening and I was thinking about the 5 touchdowns, I was like, that's significant. I remembered Sayers, and I forgot that there were 2 other people that had done that. But I mean, Gale Sayers had touchdowns on a punt return that game. I believe he had
in the mud.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was he was just an amazing athlete to watch play. I was a young child. I was just getting broken in on the NFL in 1965, and I remember the Packers teams of the '60s, and there was. I'm glad I got to watch him play.
Well, one thing I can ask you, Al, can you imagine the practice when you had on defense? You had the meanest guy to ever play defense probably was Dick Butkus, and one of the meanest guys to play offense was Mike Ditka. Yeah. How they probably went after each other.
Think how it made them better for all these people that think you don't improve by all of that.
Yeah.
By playing against better players and you got to take it easy. It makes them better.
And that's what I always loved about Dick Butkus. When he coached Montour, he just beat the snot out of those kids. I loved it.
Tell you what, you look at the Steelers in the 70s.
He turned those guys
around.
Why
would the Steelers in the 70s so good? Because they had to practice against the Steelers defense.
Yeah, yeah.
Plus their vitamins were great.
One of those players.
Yeah. When you have plates of vitamins like that and you cut your sleeves off, it's a well-known fact. Most of them are dead at 50, so God bless them.
Pretty much.
But thanks for the trivia time. Now we got some boxing to bring up, since there was a lot of great boxing, and then there was some disappointment in the boxing realm. First I wanted to shout out to a couple of the boxers that we know. Cian Dalton, he was a winner. You got Justin Brooks, he won. JT the Brick Brackett, he won.
Different events. And
this is all over the area. This is all over the area.
We're getting mixed.
That's all right. They know who they
Mr.
are.
Brooks and the Brick are amateur boxers.
Exactly.
Cian Dalton and Jason Bergman and Soka and Chambers, those are pro boxers.
Well, I appreciate it. That's why we have you on here. I'm bringing out the interest. We got a lot of people asking, how do you put up boxing Friday nights at 10 o'clock in Bethel Park throughout the area? Where are you getting the boxing matches Saturday night at 10:30? We're doing pro, we're doing amateurs. Sometimes there's a combination. And that's what I'm reporting on. We're giving some reports here.
Well,
we'll get our experts.
Since we're giving thanks, let's give thanks to these 2 gentlemen here, Smoking Jim Frazier and Al Levine, the Talking Machine, because in the boxing world in the city of Pittsburgh, these guys have taken it by storm. Second to, But like I said, they got white collar brawler. They got white collar brawler.
Watch it tonight. Smoking Jim and I may be on.
See,
tonight.
they don't even toot their own horn. I'm gonna toot it for them. They got white collar brawler. They went from mediocrity ringside to being taken very seriously, being invited to pro boxing matches, getting media credentials, getting passes. Who would have thought, man? I was sitting at this very desk, in February with 300 likes on Facebook. They've now got 2,000 some likes.
16.
They got 10,000 issues of Pittsburgh Sportsline, the magazine, in the last month have gone all over the city. So
you mean 9,600? The other 400 in Jim's trunk.
No, I didn't.
He turned in a report from Gateway that said that all his issues were gone. So.
And how about I caught him, Jessica Lee's Jazz Networking. He's like, I'll personally deliver. The ladies are looking, Smoking Jim, will you? He has a ton of them.
You get all those signed.
No, but thanks, Little Z. I appreciate
like I said, these guys, I went from, security, from roughing people up, asking who Smoking Jim Frazier is, to sitting next to Smoking Jim Frazier and Al Levine and Chip Hayner, and getting to talk about this very stuff that I love, that's dear to my heart. So, since we're talking about things we're thankful for, no more disclaimers.
No more. And Jason Bergman knocked the guy out. And officially it was 147 or something, but I watched it because they had a video up. At 125 of the fight, he paralyzed the guy. 1 minute and 25 seconds of the first round. And Jason has an open invite. He's in training, and he got the holidays, and he's going to fight in February. After he wins again in February, he's going to come back on our show at SIPS. We did a couple messages back and forth. Just a first-class guy. He's taking care of business, the shape he's in. Watch that fight.
And I remember sitting 2 years ago, I was sitting out with Rod, at an event out in Monessen. We were eating fish sandwiches, and I ate my fish sandwich and didn't eat the bun. And Jason Bergman said, are you getting ready for me or whatever? Because I didn't eat the bun because it was some kind of sign that, that I'm trying to get ready. Well, thank God I didn't eat the bun, and I never had to fight that man. And it never materialized because it's in my best interest.
He has some fists of iron, which I respect there, and he's just a gentleman, first-class individual. And now I want to get to the Rod Salka fight. And a lot of things in boxing over the years, look at the heavyweight division and look at the corruption. How did Don King have both fighters? Now, I know that happens, but when you're betting on it and people know it and you're not letting certain people win at times, it's a little too obvious. Now, I didn't watch the fight. I didn't make it to the Brenner Enclave in Munhall. Didn't make it. The roads were getting bad here in Bethel. I don't know what happened. But
smoking Jim.
The shuttle service was supposed to pick me up, but I got conflicting times on when it was coming. The Brenner Contracting shuttle service.
Let me ask you this: you should have just went to the owner of Brenner Contracting himself. That's where you went wrong.
I know, but you told me to trust the mayor, so I did. But anyhow, I got all these text messages from people. Smoking Jim alerted me to, Rod lost the fight, and people that watched it were texting me back and forth that it looked terrible. It looked like you got to watch the fight. So it ended up, a couple people did post it. I watched the whole fight, beginning to end, just to see what they were seeing. But what I saw is Rod won the fight as a boxer. You had announcers talking over top of everything and saying that judges might decide whether it's a power punch, if that scores more than just a boxer. And plus, he's in Texas. They must have said that dozens of times.
They were planting the seed early.
Right, and they put a lot of fertilizer on it because it grew in a redwood tree. Because lo and behold, the guy who they said was a first-time judge, Castillo, gave it a draw, which I found shocking because they already set up that he might give more credence to power punches. Here he gave it as a draw. So I thought maybe that's a good sign. But I already knew he lost, and it was just terrible.
But the disparity in the scoring, like one of the judges had it like 98, 92, and there's no way on the planet that guy that Rod fought outboxed him to that degree, because he didn't outbox him.
With my amateur ringside eye and watching boxing for almost all my life, it looked like there's no way that he lost more than 2 rounds, in my mind. Now, I know others say maybe more, but I thought he won 8.
I had it 7-3, and that was being, probably liberal.
And that was just shocking because the shape that Rod was in. Now, we've all watched boxing. Now, how many times do we see kids guys spitting out their mouthpieces and everything else? Rod was in such shape. You got to just watch this. At the end, he was still dancing around and boxing. And he still had legs under him, and he still was pummeling his opponent like he's supposed to till the end.
His opponent failed to make weight, so he weighed more than Rod. So he had more power than Rod. He already had more power than Rod. He was swinging like Clubber Lang. If for those of you who know, anybody who knows who Clubber Lang is, he's a character, a fictional character from Smoking Jim's Almanac.
No, it's not from his almanac. He doesn't know him.
No, he knows him.
No, he doesn't.
I'm sure
he knows of him.
I'm sure he's watched.
He doesn't know him.
I'm sure.
Just like Brazil left.
If it's something you can watch,
if
it's something you can visualize or watch, then this general studies man, he's all for it. If it's something you have to read,
you know what? I have to agree with you. I take that back. Okay, what's your point, Z?
So my point is, this is my point. My point is that I feel that this fight for Golden Boy out in Texas was predetermined. And I say this because they knew that Rod was going to come in and he was going to give it his all, and he was going to give it his heart. He was going to give it 110%. But they knew that they wanted the older Alvarez, Canelo Alvarez's brother, to advance and fight the next fight. So the only way, in my opinion, that Rod had any chance to win that fight, now knowing what we know now, is he had to knock out that man in order to get the next fight, because it would have been undisputable. The 3 strangers sitting ringside would have had no say. Nobody would have had any say, and that's just my take on it and my feeling on it.
Was he redheaded too?
No, he's actually not redheaded. He's got dark hair.
So but that's what the whole problem is. Whenever you in the boxing game, per se
That sours a lot of people
is that you cannot put the fight in the hands of the referees, because we have all seen stranger things happen, and unfortunately, Rod didn't put this guy down, but my heart goes out to him. I know Rod it's still a champion in my eyes.
Well, I know he's going to come back even stronger, and if it's in a neutral area, and I'm not saying come back home to Pittsburgh, because then we're saying it's corrupt here. Don't come back home to Pittsburgh, fight in a neutral turf. He'll outbox whoever.
We've got robbed
there.
in Atlantic City. We've now gotten robbed in Texas. So
how about West Virginia?
Well, Paul got robbed in West Virginia. So everywhere we go, we're just getting robbed.
Late breaking news on Spadafora, because once in a while I peruse Facebook. He went to the doctor. Here he has a total blockage of his sinuses. He couldn't breathe. Not that it's an excuse, but he's getting surgery December 30th. So our prayers go out to Paul that you come back even stronger, and now you can breathe. So maybe that'll give him a little edge at
Paul's
38
at 36,
years old.
Rod's at 30, so I think there's a lot more upside.
I thought he's at 38.
There's a lot more upside on Team Salka, but when you get decisions like that, it kind of makes it hard. And my thing is, like, when you got heavyweights like Bergman, you have knockout potential with one punch.
Watch that fight. If I didn't say
you could end things with one punch. I would never want to be a fighter that lacked power, because you're going to have to go the distance. You're going to have to outclass every fighter you fight, and without a doubt, you're going to have to prove that you won that fight. As opposed to, like, if you have the power, you could really end it things quick and hurt somebody. He couldn't hurt that Alvarez, and that was another problem.
Right.
And always keep in mind when you talk about Jason Bergman, if you're a white heavyweight, you can make some money in this world.
Ask Jerry Cooney.
We're going to wrap this show up, and we're not going to be doing a Christmas Eve show next Tuesday, so we'll probably run a repeat of this show. So, Little Z, anything you want to close with here?
Yeah, I want to wish my mother a Merry Christmas, my family, all these gentlemen I'm with, Aaron, John, Devin, Dave Cable, everybody at SIPS, everybody that watches this show and follows us and appreciates all of us and supports us. I just want to thank you guys very much, like, from the bottom of my heart. It's truly a blessing to be here. I would have never thought if you would have put a microphone in front of me in February and asked me if this is where I was going to be sitting, I probably would have bet against it, put the whole house on it, like Smoking Jim told me. When I told him that this was my plan for 2013, he told me he bet against it. So I'm just happy to be here. I look forward to working with these guys in 2014. And Merry Christmas, folks, and thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, Little Z. Smoking Jim.
Well, Little Z just touched me. Most of my family live down south, and Bella Lisa Smith invited me to share Christmas with her and her family over her sister's house with her mom. So I am so
What
touched
time are they cooking?
I can't wait, but I think I'm going to read some of Sidney Poitier's book while I'm there.
Again.
But thank you so much, Bella Lisa, for the invitation for Christmas. I'm looking forward to it.
Have you read the inside cover?
All right.
Not yet.
Hey, thanks, Alan. And first off, I'd like to, wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Appreciate all the support everybody's been giving us, the likes on Facebook. I want to give a special thanks to Jim Frazier and Al Levine, the two of my colleagues here, and I've enjoyed doing the show with them the last 2 years. Give thanks to Zach. I love the spin you put on things. I appreciate you sitting there occupying our fourth chair. You kind of like round it out for us. But also, I'd like to give one shout out, and this is going to be surprising to everybody sitting here. I want to give a shout out to the person that got me my start in this gig here, Mr. Mike Migliori. He's the one that called me the first time and got me as a guest here on Pittsburgh Sportsline, and he's decided to go his own direction. But I appreciate what he did, and a special thanks to Dave Cable for putting up with our nonsense.
You forgot Big
All
Mike.
right, I got about 5 seconds. Thanks everybody. I appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Thanks to family and friends and everybody else I know and who we're going to meet in the future. You take care. God bless you. Have a Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.